So, chapter 12, leases, landlords, and tenants. In previous chapters, we've gone over ship of land, different estates in land. We went over real estate contracts and all kinds of things like that. In this chapter, we're going to have all those different topics combined, talking only about renting. So, in this chapter, we're going to explain characteristics of the 4 types of leasehold estates. We're going to describe standard lease provisions included in various forms. We're going to talk about various forms of eviction and the effects of the Truth in Renting Act, as well as the Americans with Disabilities Act. We're going to discuss differences between various types of leases, and we're going to identify the primary functions of property managers. So let's start off with lease. What is a lease? It's important to understand that if you're going to be renting. A lease is an intangible or incorporeal asset that's considered personal property because you don't own the real estate. The owner is the lessor who intentionally transfers most of their rights, like the right of possession, to the tenant, who is the lessee, for a limited period of time as defined and specified in the lease itself. The lease also sets forth the length of the contract, the amount to be paid for the right to use that property that someone else owns, and it defines the rights and the obligations of the parties. Every lease has a demising clause. That's the transfer of the property by lease. Every lease has a demising clause describing what the landlord is renting and that the tenant is to take possession of the premises. So a lease is both a contract and a conveyance in that regard. So let's highlight that. And on page 228, we'll also highlight the New Jersey Statute of Frauds requires that leases for a period of more than 3 years must be in writing. And a lease may be recorded if it's for 2 or more. We also learned that in the last chapter too, didn't we?
Yeah. So demise is a sublease?
No.
Oh.
A demise is where a landlord, there's a demising clause that specifies in the lease what exactly it is that the landlord is renting to you. What are they passing along to you?
Oh.
So every lease has a demising clause in it.
Okay.
That says the landlord is to lease the premises, and the tenant is to take possession.
Okay. Transfer of property. All done.
You're good to go?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right. So statute of frauds, we've seen this one in the last chapter, right? That's the one that says all sales contracts must be in writing, whether a real estate agent's involved or not. However, leases, they only need to be in writing if a real estate agent's involved or if it's 3 or more years in length. If it's less than 3 years, a lease can be verbal, although it's not recommended, because how do you prove what all the terms of the lease are if you have a verbal lease contract? But the law allows verbal contracts when it comes to leases, that they do not need to be in writing if they're less than 3 years. And leases can be recorded if they're 2 or more years in length.
Wait a minute. These
What's
must be writing for 3 years. However, if a license is involved. Well, it says the lease must be in writing if 3 or more years.
Right here, the second bullet point in the box. Lease Lease must be in writing if 3+ years. However, if a licensee is involved, it must always be in writing, no matter the length.
But can't you write up a lease for just 1 year? Or am I getting this confused with something else?
Yes. And a 1-year lease is less than 3 years, right?
Yeah.
So it could be in verbal or it can be in writing. It's always recommended to be in writing
Okay.
because
If it's more than 3 years, if it's 3+, then you need
if it's 3 or more years, it's required to be in writing.
writing, right? Otherwise, verbal is okay.
If it's less than 3 years, it could be verbal. However, I don't suggest even if it's a month that you have a lease, a verbal lease. I suggest you get it in writing.
I
Otherwise,
don't.
how do you dictate what the lease terms are? How do you prove that you disclose to the tenant what the lease terms are? How do you prove they violated the terms of the lease if you got nothing in writing?
All right. Because one person could say one thing, another person
He
could
said,
say.
she said,
Yep.
right? Get it in writing. Always get it in writing. That's the way you CYA.
I don't think so nowadays. Anybody do like verbal thing, you know?
Always in writing. Please get it in writing.
Right.
But for exams, I'm just teaching you this crap because you need to know for exams because they ask you questions about it. Even though it's not a recommended thing and most people don't do verbal, sometimes they do. You get property owners that they're doing month-to-month leases with people. It's not worth getting in writing. It's only month to month. If you violate the terms of the lease, I just give you 30 days notice. You got to be out.
Mm.
What is an estate and land? We learned about this in chapter 6.
Yeah.
An estate and land describes the amount and kind of interest that one has in real property. And there's 2 categories of estates and land. We have the freehold estates, which describes ownership. That's the ownership category. And there's 3 types of freehold estates. Does anybody remember what they are?
Yes.
What are they? Shoot. I got you on the spot. Anybody else? Come on. Help her out. What are the 3 types of freehold estates?
First is free something. Free.
Not free,
Land.
but fee.
Simple fee.
It goes by 3 names. Fee simple, or fee simple absolute. Okay, that's the first one.
Yeah.
It's the highest form of ownership recognized by law. It's unrestricted ownership forever. So what's the next one? What's the next form of ownership that's based on a restriction?
Restricted.
Fee determinable, also known as a conditional fee because it's based on a condition, or defeasible fee. So that goes by 3 names as well. Fee determinable, defeasible, or conditional fee. Not free, but fee.
Fee.
Yeah.
And
Life estate.
a life estate. And what's the twist on a life estate? What's a life estate called that's based on someone else's life? Other than the person it's given to? What do you call a life estate based on a third party's life?
Owners.
It actually means in Latin, based on the life of another, or for the life of another. Por otra vie. A life estate por otra vie. For the life of another. Por otra vie.
It's a Latin.
That's Latin. Yep. For the life of another. Don't worry, you got it in your notes already. I know you do. So you're taking the notes and the screenshots. I know you guys got it. You just got to study it. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Now, leasehold estate. This chapter, we're going to learn about the 4 types of leasehold estates, which are less than freehold. You're not free to hold it forever or a lifetime. So therefore, it is a leasehold estate. It is not ownership. An owner intentionally transfers some of their rights and interest in the real estate they own to a tenant for a limited period of time as defined in the lease. So a lease is considered personal property that's an intangible or incorporeal asset. It symbolizes your rights to occupy someone else's property, and you can't touch a right. So that's why it's an intangible or incorporeal assets.
Mhm.
All right. So what are the four types of leasehold estates? We have an estate for years, a periodic estate, also known as period to period, an estate or tenancy at will, and an estate or tenancy at sufferance. It can be expressed either way. You could use the word estate at will, or tenancy at will. Estate at sufferance or tenancy at sufferance. It means the same thing. So those are the four types of leasehold estates, which we're going to go over shortly in detail to learn what they are. But at first, I'm just giving you the list so that you know what are the four types of leasehold estates in case you get a question on exam. What are the four types of leasehold estates? Okay. Now, this slide I put together because some of these things are mentioned later on, but I think they're better to be mentioned in advance right now at the beginning of the chapter. And let me make a note also here for myself to suggest to the book manufacturer that they should take my info from chapter 12, slide 8, and terms earlier in the chapter. Okay. So rent is due at specific intervals per the lease. Did you know if the landlord doesn't specifically state in the lease when the rent is due, it's due in the arrear. That's the opposite of an advance. Where's your rear? Behind, right? It's behind you. So after you've used the property for the entire month, you pay the rent at the end of the month in the arrears, which is the opposite of in advance. So most leases state that the rent is due on the first of the month. But if the landlord does not specifically say that in the lease, according to New Jersey law, it's due at the end of the month in the arrears.
Didn't know that.
Errors. How do you pronounce?
Arrears. You see,
Arrears.
A-R-E-A. So rear, I mean, we can take off that A-R there, and this is pronounced rear. You know, like your
Arrears.
rear end.
Okay.
So
Arrears.
rears. That's all it is.
Wow.
Rears.
Arrears.
You
Uh-huh.
just pay at the end of the month instead of the beginning of the month.
But
So-
if he says verbally, oh, you have to pay in advance, then we have to pay in advance, like first week of the means in the advance,
it.
right? Prove it, right?
That can't be in writing. That can't be verbal.
She said verbally. What if he says verbally? Well, prove it. How are you going to prove a verbal contract?
Got it.
Not unless you admitted to it in court or something. There's no way to prove it, right? So that's why it's advised that you always get it in writing.
I think.
So anyone who terminates a lease early is considered to be in breach of contract. Like any contract, you terminate any contract early, you're in breach. A holdover tenant is one who has held over after their lease rights have expired. So a holdover tenant is a tenant who did not vacate the premises after their lease term rights have expired. Is that a bad thing? Not necessarily. As long as they're still paying the rent and they're a good tenant, a landlord may allow it. But many landlords may not want you to be renting there without something in writing.
Mhm.
So they'll tell you they could either accept your holdover tenancy or they could reject it. And if they reject it, they better not accept the next month's payment from you. Because what kind of contract would that create if they accepted your next month's payment?
We just went
My-
over this.
I know,
Number one.
it's been over. That's why I'm asking you.
Oh my God.
Implied. It creates an implied contract, which is a contract that's created by one's actions rather than their words. See, that's why I always pop up these questions out of the blue when we're talking about stuff, because I try to keep it top of your mind.
Mm-hmm.
So a landlord can either accept that holdover tenant or they could evict them. Unless they accepted the rent payment, then they can't evict them right away.
Hmm.
Now, eviction, what is eviction? We learned about what foreclosure is, but what is
Get
eviction?
out.
Eviction deals with tenants. Foreclosure deals with owners.
Mhm.
Eviction deals with tenants. Eviction is the legal process of removing a tenant through the court system. It's a legal proceeding.
Right.
Can you, as a landlord, change the locks on a tenant if they don't pay the rent, throw their stuff out at the curb, shut off their heat or hot?
No.
Why not? They're not paying the rent. Property, and you got to pay these bills. You're
Because
right.
you signed a
You're right.
contract.
You're right. They can't, because even though they're violating the terms of their lease, maybe their lease expired, maybe they're not paying the rent, maybe they're violating the terms of the lease. What is a lease?
It's a contract.
And what does that contract say?
The terms of the property that you're going to be leasing to them.
And it determines the rights and obligations of both of the parties.
Correct.
Can you take away someone's rights?
No. Or
So,
you can't touch their personal property.
okay, stay on track with me.
Okay.
Can you take away someone else's rights?
No.
But what if you're the person that gave them those rights, and those rights, when you gave them those rights, they were based on a condition that they follow certain rules?
Yeah.
You still
Well,
Contract.
that's how we establish their rights.
hmm
But that's
But
what a lease does. A lease gives people rights to occupy your property if they follow your rules that are written in the lease.
hmm
And if they violate those rules, you can't take away their rights still.
No, you got to go to the courts.
And the court can then examine if they violated the terms that gave them those rights. And then the court can say, you don't have those rights no more because you violated the terms you agreed to. So nobody's taken away the rights. The court's just examining the situation and determining that you don't have those rights no more because you violated the terms. And only a court can do that. So that's why you can't rip them out, pull them out by their hair and throw them out on the curb, change the locks on them, or throw all their crap out.
hmm
So eviction is the legal process of a removal of a tenant through the court system. A landlord cannot lock a tenant out or turn off their services or physically remove them. The tenant has rights still, even though they're not following the rules. So eviction is the process of revoking those rights because the tenant violated the terms they agreed to in the lease, which has granted those rights, or the lease expired, granting those rights. So you got to go through the legal process of eviction to get a tenant out. And if they still don't leave, can you grab them by their hair and pull them out?
Nope.
But you could call a sheriff's officer over to your house, and they will physically remove them.
Not the attorney, right?
Yeah. What attorney is going to go grabbing somebody and physically removing them from the property? Come on, that's law enforcement, a different agency altogether. That would
Different
be
as I
the
say.
sheriff's department. Correct. All right. So leasehold estates, there are 4 types. So write the number 4, highlight leasehold estates on page 228, and then highlight 1, 2, 3, 4. These are your estate for years, periodic estate, also known as period to period, tenancy at will, and tenancy at sufferance. Just like that list that I had on that slide, well, you got it here in the book.
Right.
Just the list of the 4 types of leasehold estates.
Done.
Now I got an explanation of each one. This is just a short, abbreviated explanation of each one. An estate for years. You see in figure 12.1 there in the middle of the page?
Yes.
Yeah.
These are the distinguishing characteristics of the 4 leasehold estates. We'll start off with the estate for years. It's a lease for a definite period of time. It's for a fixed term. It has an end date in it. So it's where it says distinguishing characteristics. it says for a definite period of time. I want you to write after that. Fixed term with an end date. Fixed term with an end date. Here, I got a screenshot for it. You can write these things. Do it like I got right here. I'll actually swap the order of these slides here. Maybe know you got all those notes down.
End date.
Yep. Fixed term with an end date.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, done.
All right. So a estate from period to period automatically renews. It has a renewal date in it. An estate at will is for an estate for an indefinite period of time. It's indefinite. It's not defined. And then we have an estate at sufferance, which is an estate without the landlord's consent.
A state of sufferance without landlord's consent. Oh, I don't know what that is.
Okay, so once again, here's a slide I made showing you the distinguishing characteristics. The estate for years is a lease for a definite period of time for a fixed term. It has an end date in it. Has a start date, has an end date. You know when the lease term ends. Okay.
Mhm.
Do not be fooled by its name. Estate for years does not need to be for a period of years. An estate for years can be a month to month. It could be 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 24 months. The key characteristics is you know when it begins, you know when it ends. Has an end date. When the end date comes, the landlord doesn't need to give you notice to leave.
Right.
You renew the lease, you got to go. And then we have a periodic estate, also known from period to period.
Mhm.
This is also a leasehold estate that has a date in it. However, that date is not an end date. It's a renewal date. And if you didn't give the landlord a notice to quit saying that you're not going to renew the lease, it will automatically renew for the same amount of time the original lease was written for. If it's 1 month, well, it'll automatically renew for another month and another and another until the tenant gives the landlord notice to quit. If it's for 3 months, it'll automatically renew for another 3 months. If it's for 6 months, it'll automatically renew for another 6 months, and so on and so forth. An estate or tenancy at will is for an indefinite, undefined period of time. And an estate or tenancy at sufferance is one without the landlord's consent. Okay, so let's learn a little bit more about it than that, because this is just showing you what the defining, distinguishing characteristics of these different types of leasehold estates are, how you could spot them. So let's go into each one. Here, do all these highlights here as I read off what an estate for years is. An estate for years is for a fixed term. Okay, so we're going to go over each one of the leasehold estates now in more specificity. So do the highlights here, and I'll go over the notes. An estate for years. Once again, don't let the name fool you. It does not need to be for a period of years. It's for a fixed term with an end date. So it could be for a week, it could be for a month, it could be for 3 months, it could be for a year, it could be for 2 years.
So
Okay.
start date and end date,
It
right?
has a start date, it has an end date. You know when the lease
Okay.
term will end.
Okay.
All right. It's for a specific period of time, has an end date. No notice to quit is required to terminate this type of leasehold estate because it has an end date in it. You know, if you did not sign a new lease, you got to go before the expiration date or by the expiration date. Now, if the tenant doesn't renew by signing the new lease, they have to vacate by the end of that term.
Now, what if your landlord forgets to send you a new lease?
Well, then you should be asking the landlord for a new lease.
Okay.
You can stay there. Huh. All right. I mean, you could, you know, if they forget to give you a new lease, at some point they're going to remember and then come up with a new lease and send it to you to sign.
Yeah, that happened to me the first 2 years. She was good about it. Then this year came and I was like, you forgot to send me a lease. She was like, oh my gosh. But she travels a lot. So
Yeah. People, stuff happens, you know.
But in that case, if I would have paid my next month rent without signing a lease, then I would I be into a month-to-month lease at that point?
How late was she giving you your lease?
Well, it renewed and I still didn't have it. I went past my lease date.
It did not renew if you had an estate for years. Estate for years has an end date. It ends on that end date. It doesn't renew. After the end date, if you did not move out, you are now a holdover tenant. And the landlord can either accept the holdover tenancy and accept your payment, or they could say you got to go. Now, the landlord in this case, they forgot to give you a new lease to renew it. So you were a holdover tenant during that time before they came up with and sent you the new lease to sign. Okay.
Okay.
And then you signed that new lease, and then that new lease had a start date and an end date.
Correct.
All right. So you guys got these highlights here?
Yeah.
All right. Periodic estate is from period to period. It does have a date in it, but that date is not an end date. It's a renewal date. It's a renewal date rather than an expiration date. These types of leases will automatically renew for the same amount of time the original lease was written for, unless either party gives notice to quit to terminate the lease before that renewal period. Now, how much notice is required to be given before you could terminate a periodic estate? Well, it depends on how long the lease term is. If it's week to week, 1 week's notice is required. Month to month, 1 month's notice. If it's for a period of years, 3 months advance notice is required. So when a tenant gives their notice to quit, that they're not going to renew, that they're not going to be staying, that they're going to be moving out, and then they don't vacate, they could be held liable for double the rent for each month that they've held over. Reason being is the landlord may have arranged to get another tenant in there, and now they're in breach of contract with the new tenant because the property's not available yet for them. So the landlord's going to have to put them up somewhere until the place is available. They're going to have to put their stuff in storage, and they're going to have to try to get you out. And so they're allowed to collect double the rent from you each month that you remain to try to cover some of those expenses. All right, periodic estate, let's do the highlights on this. Make sure you cross out the word indefinite. Even though it makes sense there, I do not want you to associate the word indefinite with periodic estates, because exams, the word indefinite is going to be associated to the tenancy at will. Okay, so I do not want you to associate it. That's why I want you to cross out the word indefinite next to a periodic estate. Even though it makes sense in this sentence, I don't want you to associate that word, because on exams, they ask you which estate in land is for an indefinite period of time. So I don't want you to associate the word indefinite with the periodic estate.
This is also applied to apartments. You know, in Addison, there are so many like apartments over here.
This is for rentals, period.
Period, right?
So periodic estate, sometimes called an estate from period to period, are created when a landlord and a tenant enter into an agreement that continues for a length of time without a specific expiration date. Rent, however, is payable at definite intervals. First of the month, fifth of the month, whatever the agreement is. So the tenancies generally run for a certain amount of time, for instance, month to month or year to year. The agreement's automatically renewed for similar succeeding periods until one of the parties gives notice to terminate or to quit.
Mhm.
Double rent. Got it.
And so you guys got the definition of holdover tenancy here. And a New Jersey tenant who remains in possession of leased premises after giving notice of their intention to quit the premises may be held liable for double the rent. Okay. Then we have estate or tenancy at will. Here, do these highlights, but let me take another picture of this one here to replace this slide because the top of it is a little bit blurry.
Mhm.
Let me make sure my camera on my cell phone is not dirty. And I will snap a picture of this.
So you can fix it later, right?
Yep.
Yeah, tenancy at will.
All right. So an estate or tenancy at will is for an indefinite period. There's no length of time specified in the lease for the lease term. Either party must give 3 months notice to terminate. It's terminated by the death of either the landlord or the tenant, and both parties must agree to the indefinite term with 3 months notice to quit. Now, when can this be used? Well, it can be used at any time, but when does it usually make sense to use a tenancy or estate at will? Well, if a landlord was notified by the state that their property is being taken away by eminent domain,
Mhm.
they don't know exactly when that's going to occur. But in the meantime, they have to pay their taxes. They need to pay their mortgage bill. So the landlord can't give you a year-long lease because they don't know if they're going to have the property for a year.
Mhm.
The state just needs to give them 3 months notice. So when the state gives them 3 months notice, what are they going to give the tenant?
3 months
It's
notice.
notice. You got to get out in 3 months because the state's going to take the property and I need to deliver it vacant. So the state will give at least 3 months notice to the owner that they're taking the property. Now they'll notify them way in advance that they're going to take it by eminent domain, but they don't know when exactly that's going to occur. They need to establish what the value of the property is. They're going to need to pay the landlord. They're going to have to do the whole procedure. And when's that going to occur? We don't know. But in the meantime, property owner got to pay their bills. They got to pay their mortgage. They got to pay their taxes, or they can lose their property altogether. So they can't get a tenant in there and give them a year-long lease. So they have to come up with an agreement with the tenant. Hey, I'm going to rent to you at will, at my will, at your will. Okay. Either one of us has to give 3 months notice to quit. I know this property is going to be taken away by eminent domain, but I don't know when. It could be in several months from now. It could be in a year from now or 2 years. Don't know when exactly it's going to occur. So I can't give you a lease for a definite period of time. I cannot give you an estate for years. I can give you a tenancy at will. So if you want to move out, you got to give me 3 months notice. If I want you to move out, I got to give you 3 months notice. Fair enough?
Yes.
There we go. That's a tenancy at will. So as you can see, the term of an estate at will is indefinite, but the estate may be terminated by giving 3 months notice. Now, the word indefinite applies to both tenancy at will or the periodic estate, but on exams, they associate the word indefinite with the tenancy at will, so I don't want you to study
That's why you
and
took
get
that out.
confused. That's why I got you to take it out.
Now, this tenancy at will, that's only if the government's come to take it, or this is if you're about to sell it off, or anything that's
Anybody
about
could-
to happen.
Anybody can use this at any time. But why would you? It would only really make sense for you to use it in like a situation where the property's being taken away and you don't know how long you could, lease it for. But you could do this with anybody. You could enter into a tenancy at will with anybody, an estate at will with anybody at any time. It's one of the 4 leasehold estates.
So if I didn't want to renew my lease, what would I do? Would I ask her for a tenancy at will and give her 3 months notice?
Are you looking to get out?
No, but I'm just using that example. If I want to get out this,
Well,
when my renewal's coming up and I don't want to sign my renewal,
okay, then you got to go.
I just make sure I'm out by that day. I don't have to give her no notice.
Yeah, because you have an estate for years, right?
Yeah, mine's a yearly lease.
Okay. Yeah, but is it an estate for years? Does it have an expiration date in it, or does it have a renewal date?
It has an expiration date.
Okay, so you have an estate for years. So they don't need to give you any notice. You need to be out by that date that's in the lease.
But
Yeah.
I was saying to her, if I want to not renew my lease, do I have to give her a certain amount of time to tell her I'm not renewing it?
Nope.
Just be out by the last day of the lease.
You got to be out by then. Now, landlords will typically, now your landlord forgot a couple times. She seems a little forgetful, whatever the case is. But this is why you got to treat renting. If you're going to be a landlord, you got to treat it like a business. You got to have things very organized. Otherwise, especially with residential renting, residential leases, because the courts favor the tenants over the landlords because the landlords are more business savvy or should be. That's at least the way that the courts look at it. So they look at the tenants as if they're ignorant and don't know anything about the law or anything. In reality, it's often the opposite. The tenants usually know the law very well and they know how to play the law. They know how to play the system. But either way, if your lease comes up, it has an expiration date in the lease. Your landlord will typically send you a lease renewal. It should be at least 2 to 3 months before your lease expires.
That never happened.
Now, she may not do that. She may wait till the last minute to give it to you because you got an expiration that goes up to the last day. But a smart landlord would at minimum give it to you a month in advance.
That's what she usually do. Give it to me in a month.
So that you can respond with it. And if they don't get it right away, they could be like, hey, what's up? we didn't receive the lease from you yet. Instead of waiting till the actual expiration of the lease and for you to say, I'm not renewing it, I'm leaving.
Mhm.
If the landlord gave it to you 2 or 3 months in advance, they give it to you, a month goes by, they still didn't get it, they could be like, hey, what's up? Oh, I'm not going to renew my lease. Oh, okay, great. Now that landlord can put an ad to try to get a tenant. They could put up a for rent sign to try to get a tenant lined up for when you do leave. They got someone else that's going to move right in. So there's no lapse in time for them to collect the rents.
Gotcha. Now, what if she want me out? She got to give me that 3 months notice. If she don't want to, say she wants, she got to offer to buy and not to lease.
She needs a good reason why not to rent to you.
Oh, okay.
Mm.
Landlord can just say, they can't just say, I'm not renting to you no more.
Because that's what happened to my girlfriend. She went and leased a place in North Brunswick, and then they came to her and said, we're selling the place. She has to find somewhere to live
Well, that's a reason,
because they're selling the place.
because they're selling the place.
Okay.
And maybe the new buyers want it empty.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay,
But they
want
still
to
got to
see
give her an
empty.
amount of time to get out, though, right?
You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, they still got to give you time.
Okay.
Yep.
But what if you don't find nowhere to go?
Oh, well, hold on a second. If it's in the state for years, you got to be out by the end of the lease term.
Right.
But they shouldn't wait till the last minute to tell you.
Okay.
Correct. They should give you sufficient time to try to find a place. Because look, if they wait till the last minute to tell you, you could be like, "Well, I got no place to go. I'm not going nowhere until I find another place." And then can the landlord just change the locks on them when they go out to work? When they go out shopping? No. Look, they don't have a lease no more. Their lease expired. Doesn't matter. Landlord cannot change the locks or evict you. They have to take you to court. Eviction is a process where you go to court. So even in that case, your lease term, the end date came about, you did not move out, whether you're paying a rent or not, the landlord has to take you to court to get you removed. And so people will just go that route. And that's not really worth doing that. You're better off talking to the tenant saying, hey, listen, I'm going to be selling the house. So I'm not going to be able to renew your lease this year. So
Right.
I just want to give you a heads up notice so that you have enough time to look for another place. So I'm going to give you 2 or 3 months here. Okay. That would be the nice thing to do. That should be
Very
the
true.
proper way to do it.
Very true.
Okay. But this could be handled in many different ways, you know. Whether it's just because the landlord's disorganized or because they don't give a crap, or it depends on how the people handle it. That's it. That everything doesn't have to be a fight or hostile.
Mhm.
All right. An estate or tenancy at sufferance. Make sure you also write this over here. It's also not paying rent. Okay. So let's highlight this and then write also not paying rent. I'm going to make a note of this as well. That's on page 229, right? Page 229. That's for sufferance. Yeah, because that's an important part to have in that definition, that the tenant's also not paying rent. Because you could have listen, this is not a squatter. A tenant at sufferance is not a squatter. A tenant at sufferance is a tenant who had a valid lease at some point in time. That lease expired, and the tenant did not renew the lease and did not move out. So they're now a holdover tenant, and they're not paying rent. So a holdover tenant not paying rent can be evicted at any time for non-payment of the rent. When it's for non-payment of rent, no notice is needed to start the eviction process. Now, this is not squatters' rights, which could create an easement by prescription. This is a tenant who once had a lawful lease. They were once a lawful tenant with a valid lease. So just as fee simple absolute is the highest estate in land, tenancy at sufferance is the lowest. The tenant has rights, but those rights have expired. They did not move out, and they're not paying rent. The landlord cannot remove the tenant themselves. The tenants still have rights. Those rights must be revoked through the courts to get them out. So the tenant's rights
Going on with the garbage.
expired. They didn't move out,
Shoot.
and they aren't paying rent. So for every month they remain, they're causing the landlord to suffer. Thus, the name tenancy at sufferance.
We have different, not the different. We don't have that first line in the book. Arises when a tenant who
And which one?
You gotta look in that paragraph. It's kind of reworded. You gotta put in your own kind of words. It's not verbatim like he has, but it's all in there.
Yeah, over here at the end of the line, you're gonna write "and not paying rent." Everything's just shifted over a little bit because the definition for tenancy at sufferance here in the book changed slightly. It is
yeah.
a tenancy at sufferance arises when a person or persons occupy a premises without the consent of the landlord. A tenancy at sufferance can be evicted at any time. So at the end of that first line above it, I want you to write "and not paying rent." So it reads, a tenant at sufferance arises when a person or persons occupy a premises and not paying rent without the consent of a landlord. Yeah, that whole definition is kind of screwy there. But yeah, you see, yeah, I like the old definition better. Right? When a person or persons occupy premises without the consent of the landlord.
Yeah, that's better, right?
Yeah, I like the version that's in the book actually, because this old version from that I have on the slide here. I think it's better here because it says a tenant at sufferance arises when a tenant who lawfully came into possession of real property continues after their lease rights have expired. They hold possession of the premises without the consent of the landlord. A tenant at sufferance can be evicted at any time. Okay, yeah, wow. The current book version is even worse than that. Yeah, so I'm going to rewrite it. So
yeah, this one is better. The new version has better definition.
Entire definition. I don't like either one. Both of them could be written better.
Yeah.
So, listen, this is a lot wordy up here. I could probably knock down the words because this repeats a lot and it's just trying to make bullet points here. But if I wanted to just give a definition for this, I would say a tenant at sufferance is a tenant who once had a valid lease. That lease expired. The tenant did not renew a lease and they did not move out. They're now a holdover tenant and they're not paying rent.
What you do?
They could be evicted at any time. All right. You guys have this highlights down? Everything's good? All right, so a recap. Demise is a transfer of property by lease. Do not confuse it with devise, which is a transfer of property by will upon death. Remember those? Don't mix those two words up, demise and devise. Even though demise sounds like death, devise is the death term. Demise is a transfer of property by lease. A leasehold estate is the tenant's right to occupy someone else's land, and they're considered personal property, which is an intangible or incorporeal asset. A holdover tenant is a tenant whose rights to occupy real estate expired, but they did not vacate at the end of the lease term. And the landlord has the right to either accept the holdover tenancy, allow them to continue renting without a lease, or choose to evict them. And the four types of leasehold estates are an estate for years. It's for a specific period of time with a definite termination date, and does not have to be for a period of years. It could be month to month, week to week, or year to year. No notice to terminate has to be given at the end of the lease term because there's an expiration date in it. So no notice to quit. Let me see, where is that? No notice to terminate. No notice to quit is required at the end of the lease term. Because there is an expiration date in the lease. All right.
No notice to quit is required at end of the lease term because there is an expiration date.
Yep.
Yeah.
And a periodic estate is from period to period with no specific termination date. It automatically renews perpetually for similar succeeding periods of time. For similar succeeding periods, unless the tenant gives notice to quit. A lease from week to week requires 1 week's notice, month to month, 1 month's notice, or a period of years, 3 months' notice to quit, to not renew. A tenancy at will is for an indefinite, I see how I associate indefinite there with at will, indefinite period of time, no termination date in it. It's created with the consent of the landlord or by a court order. It can be terminated by the death of either the landlord or the tenant, and it requires 3 months' notice to quit by either party. A tenancy at sufferance is when a tenant who lawfully came into possession remains in the property without the consent of the owner after their rights expire and isn't paying the rent. A holdover tenant not paying rent can be evicted at any time without a notice to quit. It's the lowest estate in land. Okay, so here are some of the standard provisions of any lease. Yeah, just like any contract, you got to have capacity. You got to have competent parties, capacity to the contract. Got to have competent parties. You have to have a demising clause that says the landlord's to let and the tenant is to take possession of the premises. You have to have a description of the premises, what exactly is being rented and what is excluded from the tenant's use. Do you know that if you, in a lease, if the landlord does not specifically state what the tenant can or cannot use, the tenant can use the entire property. So if you're renting a house, if it has a garage and the landlord's using the garage to keep their stuff in there and they don't want the tenant to use the garage, you have to specify in the lease that the garage is off limits to the tenant.
Okay.
Or maybe the basement, the tenant has use of half of the basement and the other half is for the landlord, or the attic, you know, because they store stuff in these things, you know. So maybe the tenant has access to half of it or none of it. You have to specify it in the lease, because if you don't, then the tenant has rights to use the entire property. Okay? The term also must be clearly stated. The duration or will. How and when the rent is to be paid, it needs to be specified. Because if you don't, according to New Jersey law, Rent is due in arrears after
Mhm.
the end of the month. The opposite of in advance, when
Mm.
landlords want the rent paid in advance. Leases must be in writing for a term of more than 3 years, and they can be recorded if more than 2. However, if a licensee is involved, we must follow licensing law and the Real Estate Commission rules that require all contracts that we prepare be in writing, no matter the length. And lastly, signatures. Any contract to be valid needs to be signed by everybody.
Both.
If you got a contract that's only signed by a tenant, it's not valid. And both parties need to get a copy of that fully executed contract. I see this game that landlords play sometimes where they get the tenant to sign the lease, but then they never supply a fully executed copy of the lease to the tenant with their signature on it, or to the real estate agent. They try to play these games. It's like, yo, we need this fully executed lease. You don't have any contract right now until you sign it. It needs to be signed by everybody. And we need it. We need that original, that duplicate original, to give to the tenant as well.
Mhm.
Window guards, we'll go over this tomorrow because it's the end of the day already.
Mhm.